They told him to step back. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just firmly, like the kind of firmness that doesn't expect an argument because it has already decided who you are. The black iron gates of the cemetery were closing for the general's funeral, uniforms pressed, medals gleaming, cameras rolling. And there stood a single father in a faded black coat, holding his little daughter's hand, his veteran ID trembling between his fingers as a guard shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, sir. This service is restricted." What no one knew, what would soon bring an entire funeral to a halt, was that the man they were turning away had once saved the life of the very general they were honoring. Before we go any further, stay with this story until the end, because what happens next will change the way you look at respect, sacrifice, and the quiet heroes among us. And if stories like this move your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps these stories reach more people who need them. His name was Daniel Reyes. He hadn't worn his uniform in years. It didn't fit the same anymore, not after night shifts, cheap meals, and the slow erosion of time that comes when life keeps demanding but never replenishing. He worked maintenance at a public school, cleaned offices on weekends, and raised his 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, alone since her mother passed. He hadn't come to the funeral for recognition. He hadn't even planned to come at all. But when he saw the news that morning, the flag-draped casket, the name of the general scrolling across the screen, something in his chest had cracked open. He owed the man more than silence. Sophia squeezed his hand as the guards spoke again, their voices low, apologetic, but unmoving. She looked up at her father with wide eyes. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" she whispered. Daniel knelt, brushing her hair back, forcing a smile that cost him more than the guards could imagine. "No, sweetheart, we're okay. We'll stand over there." He turned away without protest, because protesting had never changed much in his life anyway. The cemetery was full of power that day. Black SUVs, officers with gold trim, men who had commanded thousands, women who had rewritten history. Daniel stood at the edge, unnoticed, invisible, as he had learned to be. But his mind wasn't in the present. It was thousands of miles away, years in the past, in a desert where the air burned your lungs and the nights were louder than screams. Back then, Daniel wasn't a janitor or a single dad. He was Staff Sergeant Reyes, infantry, assigned to a small unit tasked with securing a volatile region. On one mission, everything went wrong. An ambush, chaos, radio static, smoke, and in the middle of it all, a convoy hit, one vehicle disabled, another on fire. Inside the wrecked transport was a high-ranking officer who had insisted on visiting the front lines against advice. A future 4-star general, though none of them knew that yet. Daniel remembered the sound of the explosion, the ringing in his ears, the screams. He remembered running when every instinct told him to hide. He remembered pulling open a twisted door with bleeding hands, dragging a wounded man through dust and gunfire while bullets snapped inches from their heads. He remembered shielding that man with his own body when another blast went off. He remembered the general's face, bloodied, shocked, gripping Daniel's arm and asking, "Why are you risking this?" And Daniel's answer had been simple. "Because you're one of us." Daniel never talked about that day. Medals were awarded quietly. Files were stamped. Life moved on. He left the service after his 3rd deployment, haunted but proud, determined to build something peaceful for his family. But peace had its own battles. Medical bills, loss, grief, long nights where Sophia cried herself to sleep asking for her mother. Through it all, Daniel kept going. Not because he felt strong, but because stopping was never an option. A murmur rippled through the cemetery now. A sudden tension, heads turning, radios crackling. At the center of the path, the ceremony paused. A tall figure stepped forward, older now, silver-haired, posture still unbreakable. A 4-star general, uniform heavy with history. He had been walking toward the casket when his eyes locked onto a man standing off to the side with a little girl. The general stopped. The world seemed to stop with him. "Hold everything," he said, his voice calm but absolute. The guards stiffened. Officers froze. The band lowered their instruments. The general walked, not toward the podium, not toward the casket, but toward Daniel. Every step felt like a lifetime. Daniel felt Sophia's grip tighten. He considered stepping back, apologizing, leaving. But the general reached him first. And then, in front of everyone, the man saluted. Not a casual salute. A deep, respectful one. Staff Sergeant Reyes, the general said, his voice breaking just enough to reveal the weight behind it. You saved my life. Gasps spread through the crowd. Cameras turned. Guards went pale. Daniel tried to speak, but nothing came out. The general knelt in front of Sophia. And you must be his daughter, he said gently. You should know your father is the reason many families still have their loved ones. Tears streamed down Daniel's face now, unstoppable. Years of being unseen, unheard, unacknowledged poured out in that moment. Sir, he finally managed, I just wanted to pay my respects. The general stood and turned to the guards. This man doesn't need permission. He belongs here. Front row. The funeral resumed, but it was no longer the same. Stories were told. Names were spoken. And one story, not on the program, carried the deepest weight of all. The story of a man who did his duty, then went home and kept doing it without applause. After the service, people came to Daniel. Officers, officials, strangers. Some thanked him. Some apologized. The general ensured Daniel received the recognition long overdue, not for fame, but for dignity. More importantly, he ensured Daniel left with something priceless, the knowledge that his sacrifices mattered. That night, as Daniel tucked Sophia into bed, she looked at him with sleepy eyes and said, Daddy, everyone stood up for you today. Daniel smiled, kissing her forehead. No, sweetheart, they stood up for what's right. And that's the message we leave you with today. Sometimes the world overlooks the quiet heroes. Sometimes respect comes late, but integrity, sacrifice, and love always find their moment. If this story touched you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share these powerful stories with more hearts around the world. And remember, you never truly know who someone is until the moment they're finally seen.